Now, who else can you look at? Obviously, you have to go to the record labels, right? You know, when when I grew up, and I'll tell you, this is something that I think helps put this in context. My mother was young when she gave birth to me. My mother was so young, I think she and I went to elementary school together. So she was this young 16-year-old single mother, and I stumbled through school. I was a horrible student. I never would have gotten admitted to Brown. It wouldn't have happened. And but I got to college. I went to college because I didn't have anywhere else to go. And they said, well, what do you want to study? I said, well, I don't know. Well, what's finance? They said, well, that's money. I said, okay, I want to study that. Because I figured if I studied money and learned about money, somebody would pay me money to talk about money. So I kept studying money. I got my Ph.D. in finance, and I learned capitalism. I know capitalism better than a man knows his ex-wife. I know how capitalism works. I know that capitalism is powerful. It's powerful like fire. Fire can either cook your food and keep you warm, or it can burn you and your family alive. Or like a drug can heal you and make you feel better, or it can turn you into an addict. I know that capitalism is a hungry beast with an insatiable appetite. It's never satisfied with how much money you made last quarter because the focal point is always growth. If you're not growing, what have you done for me lately does not matter. It's only what you're doing for me right now. That's how capitalism works. It never, ever stops eating. So this capitalist beast that is driving the commercialized, weaponized brainwashing of black children all across America obviously has to be dealt with. It obviously sees black America as kind of collateral damage. I don't think that they get up wanting to destroy the lives of so many millions of children. I don't think that's the goal. Their goal is to make money. If they could do it without destroying the children, then they would probably do that. But in a way, you could almost compare it to toxic waste. This transaction's happening where people are selling hip-hop to each other, and the waste is kind of dropping on our kids. Our kids aren't always the ones that go out and buy the records, but they're the ones who absorb the messages. They're the ones who absorb the role models because they don't have a multitude of role models to choose from when they turn on the TV. And then you also have to look at capitalism because it's the capitalist executive who decides that we're going to pick the most ignorant person in the room and give them the biggest microphone. And then when Tyrone makes that record and he wants to say something positive, no, we tell him, no, just throw in a few more bitches and hoes and talk about being from the hood and shooting people, and that'll sell records. The fact of the matter is that we know that this genre has to be confronted. If you have the interesting experience of being a black male in America, you understand the impact of these images. You understand the dehumanization of both black men and black women that comes from this genre. The fact that people somehow believe that black men, that we love our children less than other people, that we are a little less hardworking, that we have an appetite for criminal behavior, or that we love being uneducated. Now, you can't talk about hip-hop without talking about all the systemic factors that come into play. You have to talk about what we have done as a society when it comes to the prison industrial complex, where we incarcerate 5.5 times more black men than South Africa did during the height of apartheid. You have to talk about dysfunctional school systems where kids are put in special education. I understand this because I was one of those kids. You're a black boy, you go in and you do something the teacher doesn't like, and next thing you know, they show your mother a fancy chart that says that somehow your son is not as smart as the other kids. That's what my mother went through because she was a poor single mother who couldn't necessarily fight the system. We also know that art imitates life. If you ask any rapper, they're going to say, well, hey, yo, man, look, I just rap about what I see in the hood. And I understand that. I respect that. Fine, whatever. But the problem, though, is that art and life are a recursive process. Art imitates life. Life imitates art. When I look in the mirror, am I mimicking the person in the mirror, or is the person in the mirror mimicking me? So when you get into this whole chicken or egg conversation and debate, we cannot leave the core issue. The core issue is that the problem has to be addressed. It is a social virus. It is a set of toxins that are entirely unacceptable. And if you want to know the way to confront this problem, obviously it doesn't start with the artists. It doesn't just stop with the media outlets. It doesn't just stop with the corporate executives. You have to attack all three. In fact, this reminds me so much of the 19th century when you had a huge opium problem in China. And it was an interesting relationship because you had the British making lots of money selling opium to the Chinese, and then you had the Chinese addicts who were happy to buy the opium. But then you have the people who said, no, we're going to burn down the opium houses, and we don't care what either of you think. And a war ensued because of that. But as a result, China became the powerhouse that it is today. And if that had not happened, then China would never have risen to what it is right now. So this whole idea that certain people shouldn't be held accountable because they're just following orders, I don't buy that. Nazi soldiers were just following orders. In the Penn State sex scandal, people were just following orders. If you go back to slavery and there's a revolt on the plantation, the slave standing in front of the master's house trying to protect the master from the revolt was just following orders. But unfortunately, you had to say to that slave, look, we don't want to hurt you. You need to move. And if you don't move, we're going to have to take you out for the greater good. And the same thing is true for these hip-hop artists. Because the same people that don't want to take accountability for their words are glad to take the rewards and accolades that come with those words. They are paid millions of dollars for those words. So how can you expect to be rewarded for something when you are not willing to be accountable for the thing for which you're being rewarded? I mean, at that point, you start sounding like a Wall Street banker. That's why our economy screwed up. It was because on Wall Street, you had a mentality that says, look, we can take all these risks, and if it works out, we get the reward. But if it doesn't work out, we're going to get bailed out. Heads, I win. Tails, you lose. When I talk to my kids, and they want to be grown when it's time for them to make their own decisions. They want to be adults. They want to be independent. But then when those decisions go wrong, they're like, oh, well, I'm just daddy's little girl. No, you're not. You're going to handle that. So for anybody who understands where I'm coming from, anybody who agrees on this issue, anybody who sees what I'm trying to say here and agrees with me that this problem has to be addressed, I encourage you to never underestimate your power to make a difference. You don't have to change the whole world. That's a big job. But you can certainly change your world.